second half of my journey down the River Tay begins midway along its course from the Grampian Mountains to the North Sea. The Tay is Scotland's longest river and drains a vast area of the Southern Highlands. And as you'd expect, there's a lot of variety along its course. Now, from the wilds of the Highlands, I'm looking for calmer waters. Scotland is famous for its rain, which in the Highlands falls from the sky for an average of 250 days a year. This produces a huge volume of water that drains from the land in streams, burns and rivers, shaping the landscape as it rushes seawards. In this series, I'm following the course of our beautiful and varied rivers from source to sea and discovering the history of the people who settled along their banks. In this programme, I'm travelling through the heart of Perthshire as I continue my grand tour along the River Tay. My route goes with the flow from Grantley, heads south and discovers the inspiration behind Mrs. Tiggywinkle, gets hooked on fishy tales at McClure and searches for bearded tits in reed beds on the banks of the Firth of Tay. But it looks as if this isn't going to be a particularly smooth journey. To continue my trip downstream, I first have to negotiate a 400-metre stretch of craggy boulders and churning white water. Behind me are the rather daunting white waters and overfalls of the Grantley Rapids, and I'm about to go over them in a rubber boat. I think I might get wet. I've been told that this is some of the best rafting in Scotland, providing a thrilling, if wet, experience. So donning my wetsuit, I set off in a raft skippered by Dean's Eye.
And let's go forwards paddle then. Are you ready for this first one?
Dean tells me that he's been down these rapids nearly 1,000 times, but for some reason I'm not entirely reassured.
Feeling nervous?
I am slightly nervous actually. You're grinning at me.
Yeah, this is our first rapid just here. Nice slide.
Feeling slightly anxious about this one.
And
we're going downhill. We're gonna
nice
hit this rock.
work.
We're going to hit this. Oh, no. Oh,
yeah.
Whoa. And round we go. Whoa, hey. Splashy.
And let's go forwards paddle again. Got a couple of nice big waves coming up on us.
I can see the rapids ahead. Whoa. By sticking to the middle of the stream, we're pulled along by the fastest flowing water. Going downhill in a rubber boat. Hey.
Yeah.
Not relaxing, but fun, I have to say. Having successfully navigated the upper rapids, Dean briefs me on the final descent, a drop of over 1 metre.
So this is our big one coming up now. So for this one, all we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're sort of moving our bums from the sides down like this.
Right, okay. And they'll fall out the boat.
Yeah, then definitely try to stay inside of the boat, but if you fall out, it's part of the fun.
Is it?
And let's go forwards, paddle together. And stop and get down, Paul, get down. Bum on the floor.
I got wet.
Nice
Right. What great fun.
And take a minute to look at what you just came down. So congratulations, you survived the Tay.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Relieved to have narrowly avoided a dunking, I calm my shattered nerves and continue on my way. Below the rapids, the river calms down and flows more sedately towards a hamlet known as Logie Rate, not far from where the River Tummel joins the Tay. Its ancient burial ground on the banks of the river is full of headstones with fascinating carvings and is a picture of peace today. But my attention is drawn to the wrought iron grates in its centre, which hark back to much darker days. These were deployed against resurrectionists, Unscrupulous desperados who sold stolen corpses to medical schools for anatomical study in the 19th century. Not even the sleepy country churchyards of Perthshire were safe.
Now, the idea behind these grates, or mort safes as they were called, which went over the coffins, was to make it difficult, if not impossible, for the grave robbers to dig up the newly buried dead.
The mort safes protected the bodies until they started to decompose, which made them useless for dissection, so no point in digging them up. Not the greatest thing to think about. Later, the grates became obsolete when, in 1832, a law was passed allowing mortuaries to release unclaimed bodies for scientific study. Leaving the dead to finally rest in peace in Logie Rate, I continued to follow the river south towards the town of Dunkeld. I've heard that somewhere along this stretch of the riverbank is a venerable and ancient oak which draws water from the Tay through its roots. This magnificent specimen is known locally as Neil Gow's tree, named after the 18th century fiddle composer who sat and wrote tunes beneath these very branches as the river swept past. To tell me more is musician Pete Clark.
Neil Gow was a fiddle player. He lived 1727 to 1807. And he became very famous as a fiddle player during his long life.
Was he a local boy then?
Very local. If we were to walk across the field and dodge over the A9, we'd come to a tiny wee village called Inver, and that's where he lived all of his life.
So you would have known the banks of the River Tay really well?
I think so, yeah. There's one particular story of when he came down here and the Duke of Atholl was fishing in the river there.
Right.
And Neil asked him if he'd caught anything, at which point the Duke bent down and picked up a couple of great salmon. And the Duke said, "So, Neil, what would you do if you caught two such fine fish?" And quick as you like, Neil said, "Well, I'd send one across the river to yourself, Your Grace."
That was crafty.
Very crafty.
While his talents at fishing for a freebie didn't go unnoticed, it was Neil's music that attracted the attention of a very famous poet.
Burns used several of Neil Gow's melodies for his songs. And if you go to Neil Gow's cottage now, there's a plaque on the wall. And it has a verse from a poem by Burns. And the verse says, "Nae fabled wizard's wand I trow, had e'er the magic yet ago, when we a wave, he draws his bow across his wondrous fiddle."
Pete's something of a musical magician himself and has on loan one of Gow's actual fiddles on which he offers to play me a song.
The tune I'll play is, I think, probably his most famous tune. It's called Neil Gow's Farewell to Whiskey. The story behind that is in 1799 there was a failure of the harvest. And so the grain had to be kept either for food or for sowing the fields the next year. And so there was a local ban on the production of whiskey.
It's a disaster.
Terrible
Surely.
disaster. Neil Gow was distraught and naturally he wrote a sad, slow air. The saddest tune in the Scottish fiddle repertoire, I think.
I can imagine.
But so I'll play a Farewell to Whiskey.
And I shall shed a tear.
As Neil Gow's melancholy music mixes with the sound of the Tay, I continue to the town of Dunkeld, which in Old Gaelic means the fort of the Caledonians, with its market square and ancient cathedral. Here, the Tay is spanned by a magnificent seven-arched stone bridge built over 200 years ago by the famous Scottish engineer Thomas Telford. These were all well-known sights to a frequent summer visitor to the town. A brilliant artist who loved nature, had a keen eye for detail, and who was inspired by the swiftly flowing river and the animals and people who lived along its banks. Her name was Beatrix Potter.
From the age of 5, Beatrix Potter spent summer holidays on the banks of the Tay, and one of the properties that the family rented was here at Eastwood House, which is where one of the world's most famous children's storybook characters was created, Peter Rabbit.
To find out what it was about this place that fired Beatrix's imagination, I'm meeting up with author Lynn McGeehee.
The Potter family had a tradition of coming on holiday to Perthshire and to various big houses on the River Tay. Well, it was a 3-month-long holiday they had.
3 months.
3 months, yes, from July to October.
And such a contrast to London.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was complete contrast, and I think that's why she fell in love with the place.
And it was here, I believe, that a really significant character in the world of children's literature emerged.
It was indeed, because this is the place where she wrote what became The Tale of Peter Rabbit, unintentionally, because it began as a picture letter to a little friend of hers, 5-year-old Noel Moore, who was the son of her governess, and Noel had been ill, and Beatrix sat down one day to write him a letter to cheer him up.
By some miracle, I have here in my hand a photocopy of that letter. Now, could you possibly read that for us? Because it's a very significant literary moment, I think.
It absolutely is. It says, "My dear Noel, I don't know what to write to you, so I shall tell you a story about 4 little rabbits whose names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank beneath the root of a big fir tree."
That's absolutely brilliant.
Inspired by the river and her father's fishing expeditions on the Tay, Beatrix also came up with the character of Jeremy Fisher. It's amazing that so many of the characters created by a seemingly quintessentially English author owe their origins to Scotland.
I mean, there's no doubt that her association with the lady that would come up to the big house to do the laundry, Kitty MacDonald, she would see Kitty working away. She became very friendly with her. So she knew about mixing starch and putting irons up to the fire to warm. And you see that much, much later in the pages of The Tale of Mrs. Tiggywinkle.
And of course, Beatrix Potter would have heard Scots on a daily basis.
She absolutely did. We know from her journal that she loved the sound of the Scots voice, and she tried to copy it down into her journal so that when she was far away back home in London, she could memorise it.
And bring her back to those happy days when she was here in Perthshire.
Exactly, absolutely right.
Armed with a new appreciation for Beatrix Potter's work and the role played by her time by the Tay, I continue my journey along the river. Downstream from Eastwood, I reach the estate of McClure, which has been the home of the Mercer Nairns since the 12th century. The family can trace their origins back to French merchants, so it feels fitting that one of the current owners also hails from France. With a house overlooking one of Scotland's most productive rivers, it's no surprise that Claire Mercer Nairn has become a keen angler and likes nothing better than messing about in the river. Today, she's letting me have a go with one of her flies. It's an offer that few could refuse.
No, so we're just going to do a slow lift towards the bank. So I'll show you.
Okay. Up to the yellow.
Slow lift. And then big sea.
Yeah.
Huh?
Easy, easy, easy. Shall I have a shot?
Confusingly, I'm told that this type of cast is called sea roll, but I think it's supposed to be the shape of the letter C rather than the briny deep I'm aiming for.
Right,
So
okay.
slow lift, again, slow lift. Slow, 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 slow. Big sea. Big. Good. And then cast. Yeah. For big sea now. Big sea. Up. Hey, you.
I thought I was going to go with it.
Claire learnt to fish for salmon in 2014 and tells me that she fell for it hook, line and sinker.
What's the biggest fish you've ever caught?
A very modest 22 pound.
Well, that's pretty impressive.
Not as impressive as a 64 pound that was caught by Miss Ballantyne
Yeah.
101 years ago, 7th October 1922.
Did you say 64 pounds?
64 pounds. So my 22 pound is
64, that's absolutely enormous.
absolutely. She was the daughter of a gillie, of the gillie at Glendervin, which is not far away at all from here. And took her more than 2 hours.
That's incredible.
I mean, that day she had already caught a 27 pound, a 25 pound, a 17 pound, and she decided to have the last cast before going for a tea, and that's when she hooked this monster.
Good grief.
The story goes that for 2 weeks, 2 weeks later, she still could not fill her arms.
Georgina's miraculous catch was so large she took it to work to feed the masses.
So the fish was caught, weighed, and then was made the delight of Perth Royal Infirmary. I think it fed the doctors and patients alike for a week.
Served up for dinner?
Yes, because she was a nurse.
That's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Anglers are not the only ones looking for a catch. Ospreys, who feed solely on fish, also hunt these waters, and I'm honoured to be invited to visit a secret nesting site on the estate. A licensed team of birdringers have come to check on the osprey chicks, and it's Chris Baker's unenviable task to climb up to the nest perched high in the branches of a tall pine. Reaching the top, he attaches coloured rings to the 3 chicks before placing them in a bag which is carefully lowered down to Rebecca Dixon.
This is a big moment, isn't it? They're big. Look at that. That's amazing.
The chicks seem remarkably placid and allow Rebecca to give them a once-over, although some are happier at being handled than others.
This one's a feisty one.
It's going to bite you. Do you mind being bitten, or is it just an occupational hazard?
Occupational hazard, I don't mind.
Is this the female or the male?
This one's a male. Typically in raptors, the females are always larger. Measurements that we take here, such as measuring the beak and the wing and the tarsus, which is the bottom end of the bird's leg, allows us to confirm that. So that rules out if it's a runt or if it's hatched later or anything like that. 229, 10.5. Just the second close. 1,160. So this one's noticeably smaller.
So it's got a little bit of catching up to do yet.
Yes, but they'll get fed multiple times a day, and the other chicks may branch first, so that means that they'll kind of start flapping their wings and getting prepared to fly while he's still waiting on food. And this one's actually just had a meal. It's got a really thick crop here.
Fish from the Tay.
Yes, happy and healthy.
Excellent news.
Examination over, the chicks are returned to their nest to await their next fish supper, one of their 5 fish a day that come from the bountiful Tay. From McClure, the river returns to its southerly course as it makes its way to the ancient royal capital of Perth. In the 19th century, Perth was dubbed the Fair City by Sir Walter Scott, who wrote about a real event on this area of flat land on the banks of the Tay called the North Inch.
Go back to the year 1396, and the land here beside the river was the setting for a gladiatorial battle, a fight to the death between 2 warring Scottish clans. Now, this bloody encounter was actually a staged event, a trial by combat played out in front of King Robert III, his court, and members of the public. It must have been quite a show.
In the run-up to the conflict, Clan Chattan and another clan thought to be Cameron were locked in a bitter feud. When the intervention of the king failed to settle matters peacefully, it was decided to resolve the issue in combat here beside the Tay. 30 men from each clan were chosen to fight to the death.
Victory went to Clan Chattan, which lost 19 of its fighters, but all 30 Cameron combatants were killed, with the exception of one man who managed to escape by swimming across the river. Now, did this settle the dispute between the 2 clans? Not a bit of it. They continued to knock lumps out of each other for at least 9 generations.
500 years after the bloody battle at North Inch, a now more civilised city was home to the young poet William Souter. He was part of the Scots language Renaissance movement, and his most well-known collection of poems is commemorated by these quirky creatures on the banks of the Tay.
These little figures were inspired by one of Willie Souter's bairns rhymes or children's poems, which he wrote in his native Scots. Now, luckily for me, I've got two people here who are going to recite it in the authentic dialect of the city.
Once upon a day, my mother said to me, dinna clape, and dinna ripe, and dinna tell a lee. For, gin ye clape, a craw will name ye, and gin ye ripe, a daw will shame ye, and a wee snail will hease its hornies out, and hike them roon and roon about, gin ye tell a lee.
Now, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for that. But what does it mean?
So it was about a wee boy who's being told by his mum not to steal, not to tell tales on anyone, and not to lie.
And Martha, there's some really old Scots words in this too. Now, what is a daw and what is a craw?
So a daw is referring to a jackdaw, and a craw is referring to a crow, or multiple crows in the sense of this.
And you've also got other Scots words like clipe and ripe. Now, what do they mean?
So to clipe is basically to tell tales, and to ripe is essentially to steal.
So this poem is all about being on your best behaviour and not being found out.
Basically.
Right. Thank you very much.
Well, that's me told. As well as offering moral guidance, Souter's bairns rhymes are full of mischievous and lively characters, which somehow makes it all the more tragic that when he penned these verses, Souter was already losing his own mobility through illness. In fact, he became confined to just one room in this house, where I've come to meet Ian McIntosh.
Well, the disease which causes this confinement was the kind of fusion of the bones at the joints.
He ended up being bedbound.
He did, yeah. So his big antidote for that was, now I can be a writer.
So in a weird kind of way, the fact that he was bedridden liberated his imagination and gave him time to devote to poetry.
That's right. He just shut his eyes, drifted out of this space here and hovered over somewhere and then made something of it.
Despite being bedbound, this striking portrait suggests to me that Souter was quite a character.
He was quite fastidious about how he looked. He wasn't a great extrovert, but what he did do in bed was to get himself decked up.
Yeah, the dicky bow.
The dicky bow, the smoking jacket, and the pressed shirt. Underneath the covers, it was still the pyjama trousers. But
he needed to look good. Now, these mirrors had a practical function, did they not?
Yeah. As his mobility gradually decreased, he couldn't move his head much either way. So his visibility behind and to the extremities of the room and so on was much restricted. So he was able to guide people. If he wanted to reference a book, for example, he could guide you to the appropriate shelf.
Up a bit, left a bit.
That's the bit.
That's the one.
Third shelf down, and there you are. Yeah.
I'm impressed by Souter's ability to let his imagination soar and leave with a new appreciation of my own freedom to roam. Below Perth, the river widens as it mingles with the salt waters of the Firth. Here I'm greeted by an amazing sight, miles and miles of reed beds covering the north shore and stretching as far as the eye can see. This is the largest continuous reed bed in the UK, and in winter the banks are clothed in a beautiful golden hue. What surprises me is that this is a man-made environment. Graham Craig reveals its origins.
Supposedly, historically, it was planted way back in the 1700s to stop erosion of the banks.
Coastal defences?
Yeah. Seemingly, soldiers from the Napoleonic Wars were used to build some of the dikes, because every so often out into the river there are stone dikes.
In more recent history, Graham has put the reeds to another use.
We harvested the reed for thatching.
Yes. How much were you extracting?
Back in the 70s when I started, we were cutting, 100,000 bunches that we would take off this area.
How big is a bunch?
Roughly about a foot in circumference.
100,000 bunches.
And a bunch would cover 1 square foot on a thatched roof.
Was it good quality stuff?
It was, if you compare that against a straw thatched roof, which would last maybe 20 to 30 years, water rail will last up to 100 years.
100 years, so that was a prime material.
Yep.
Really worth investing in water reed if you wanted a roof over your head. As well as helping to create homes for humans, the reeds also provide an important habitat for a wide range of bird species. The site is now managed by the RSPB, who work closely with a team of licensed bird ringers to monitor the bird population. Having assembled at the crack of dawn, they've strung up mist nets to safely capture and ring the birds. And there's one species they're particularly interested in, the dainty bearded tit. Steve Moyes explains why.
Last year, we ringed over 1,000 new bearded tits.
It's a significant population we've got here.
It could be up to 250 pairs. It could be as much as a third of the British total.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it?
Reed beds are very important. They feed on insects in the reed bed during the summer, and in the winter they feed on the reed seeds.
Eager to finally see a tit up close, Steve takes me to check another net, and I'm in luck.
I'll just get him out.
There he is. Look at that.
A nice adult male.
And he's got a beard?
Yes.
Do they...
Well, it's a moustache, really.
It's a moustache.
Yeah.
Mustachio tit.
Tits.
Very splendid, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a Mexican moustache.
Apparently the females prefer the males that have the longest moustaches.
That's what I've been told as well. So what's going to happen to him now?
We're going to weigh him and we're going to measure him and then we're going to release him.
These measurements help to monitor the bird's population and tailor the management of the reeds. Although I have to say that it's a bit of an undignified process.
His weight is 15.7.
But after checking them over,
his wing is 63.
The birds are none the worse for wear as they're released.
And away they go. Back into the wild, back into the reed beds.
That's them until the next time.
It's been a real privilege to be so close to such beautiful creatures. But now it's time for me to seek out my own bird's eye view of the river as I head to my final destination. Just a few miles upstream, I want to visit a place that has often caught my eye as I've driven by, but which I've never visited. The ruins perched on top of the lofty crags of Canoel Hill.
In the 19th century, the towering cliffs above the River Tay reminded a local aristocrat of his grand tour of Europe, where he'd seen fairy tale castles perched high on the cliffs of the Rhine Valley in Germany.
The Earl felt that Perth needed its own version of those Rhine castles, so he erected a fantasy tower for decorative and dramatic effect. And here it is.
But you don't need a fake ruined tower to excite the imagination here, because just look at that view. Down there, the River Tay flows towards the salt waters of the Firth, which stretches for another 20 miles or so until it reaches the North Sea, making this an ideal vantage point for me to end my grand tour down the River Tay.
Next time, I'm in Ayrshire on a grand tour down the River Irvine.